My name is Evelyn, and I'm 42 years old, a single mother trying to make Thanksgiving perfect this year for my daughter, Lila. It's strange how a holiday that used to bring us together now feels like a test I'm destined to fail. Thanksgiving has always been our thing, our special day. Every year, Lila and I would wake up early, bake 2 pies from scratch, and play music while we cooked. She'd dance around the kitchen, covered in flour, and I'd laugh until my cheeks hurt. But that was before everything fell apart. Before the divorce. Before Lila stopped talking to me like I was her mother and started treating me like I was a stranger she couldn't stand. This year, I wanted to change that. I wanted Thanksgiving to be the bridge that rebuilt what we'd lost. I spent days scrolling through recipes, making lists, and ordering decorations that I thought she'd like. I even took time off work to make the house look warm and festive again. But from the way Lila's been acting lately, it feels like my efforts don't matter. She barely looks up from her phone anymore. I'll ask her a question, and she'll give me one-word answers, then go back to typing furiously. When I walk into her room, she quickly closes her laptop or flips her phone over. I tell myself she's just being a typical teenager, but something about it feels secretive. It's not just normal privacy, it's like she's hiding something from me. My best friend Carla came over last weekend. She's been my rock through everything, and she noticed Lila's attitude too. "Don't take it personally," she told me, sipping her coffee. "Teenagers can be cruel without realizing it. She'll come around." I smiled and nodded, but deep down, I wasn't so sure. There's a distance between us that feels heavier every day. I've tried everything: surprises, long talks, mother-daughter outings, but nothing works. Sometimes I scroll through old photos on my phone just to remember the way she used to smile at me. Back then, I thought our bond was unbreakable. Now, I feel like I'm clinging to something that already broke. Still, I couldn't give up. I decided to make this Thanksgiving the most memorable one yet. I wanted her to see that no matter what, I'm still her mom, the one person who will always be in her corner. I started planning the dinner early. The turkey, the stuffing, the cranberry sauce, everything had to be perfect. I even bought new table linens and made a centerpiece out of autumn leaves and candles. It wasn't just about dinner. It was about showing her that we could still be a family, even if it was just the two of us. I thought maybe, if she saw how much effort I was putting in, she'd open up again. Maybe we could laugh like we used to. Maybe she'd forgive me for whatever it was she thought I'd done wrong. That night, as I folded napkins at the table, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. She was standing behind me, phone in hand, recording something. When I turned around, she quickly pretended to be texting. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" I asked. She shrugged. "Nothing. Just checking something." I didn't press it. I didn't want to start another argument. But as she walked away, I couldn't help but notice the small smirk that crossed her face. It wasn't her usual smile. It was sharper, colder, like she knew something I didn't. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was being paranoid. After all, what could she possibly be planning? She's just a teenager. What could she do that would matter that much? But later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the unease. My instincts have always been strong. They've saved me before, especially during my marriage to Peter. He had secrets too, and I learned to read the smallest changes in tone or body language. And right now, Lila's tone, her behavior, her energy, it all felt wrong. I wanted to believe that she was just excited for Thanksgiving or working on a school project. But part of me, the part that's been through enough lies to recognize one when I see it, whispered that this was something else. Something darker. Something that wasn't meant to end with turkey and laughter around the table. Little did I know, 10 days before Thanksgiving, that image of perfection was about to shatter in the most humiliating way possible. It started with a single text message that wasn't meant for me. I remember it so clearly because it was such an ordinary morning. I was running late for work, coffee in one hand, grocery list in the other. Lila was still asleep, and her phone was lying on the counter next to the sink. I picked it up just to use the shopping app. I'd promised her we'd have her favorite pumpkin pie this year, and I didn't want to forget the ingredients. But as I was checking out, her phone buzzed. A message appeared at the top of the screen from someone named Maya. "Can't wait to expose her fake act. Everyone's gonna love this." My stomach twisted. The words didn't make sense at first. I stared at the screen, frozen, hoping I'd misread it. Expose her fake act. Who was her? I wanted to believe it was about someone else, maybe a classmate or a celebrity. But deep inside, I knew. I could feel it like a sting under my skin. She was talking about me. I set the phone down slowly, trying to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe it was part of some inside joke I didn't understand. Teenagers say strange things online, right? But the uneasy feeling in my chest refused to leave. I decided not to mention it right away. I spent the rest of the morning in a haze, my mind bouncing between disbelief and panic. When Lila came downstairs, she acted completely normal. She smiled faintly, asked if we could have pancakes instead of eggs, and even kissed my cheek before leaving for school. For a moment, I almost felt silly for doubting her. But that night, while scrolling through social media, I noticed something strange. Lila had posted a vague caption, "10 days to go, time to tell the truth." The comments were full of cryptic replies from her friends. Some were encouraging her. Others seemed excited, like they knew what was coming. My heart sank. The timing, it matched the text. 10 days before Thanksgiving. That couldn't be a coincidence. I felt a sharp pain behind my eyes as I scrolled through more of her recent posts. There were new photos, our living room, my kitchen, even my car, but all taken at strange angles, as if she'd been documenting things without my knowledge. One video was a close-up of a pie crust, with the caption, "Nothing sweet stays sweet forever." It didn't make sense, and yet it scared me more than I wanted to admit. Later that evening, when I walked into the kitchen, she was sitting at the table with her laptop open. I caught a glimpse of a folder titled Mom Project, and before I could say anything, she slammed it shut. "What are you doing?" I asked softly, trying not to sound accusatory. "Just homework," she replied too quickly. I wanted to press her, but I didn't. I told myself not to be the overbearing mom. Not to ruin what little peace we had left. Still, I couldn't shake the growing dread. When I told Carla about it the next day, she laughed nervously and said, "Evie, you're spiraling. Maybe she's planning a surprise video for you kids do that these days." A surprise. I wanted so badly to believe that. I really did. But as the days passed, the signs became impossible to ignore. Lila was constantly filming short clips, voice notes, videos around the house. I heard her whispering into her phone late at night. Once, I even caught her sneaking into the garage with a flashlight. I followed quietly and watched her sift through boxes of old family photos, recording some and throwing others away. I stood there in the dark, heart pounding, afraid to speak. She was collecting pieces of our life, but for what? When I finally confronted her about the late nights, she brushed me off. "I'm just working on something," she said with a cold smirk. "You'll see soon enough." The way she said it sent a chill down my spine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what could possibly be going through her mind. Then, as the clock struck midnight, I heard her laughing quietly in her room. It wasn't her usual laugh, it was sharper, unfamiliar. I got up, walked to her door, and pressed my ear against it. I could hear her talking to someone on a video call. "Yeah," she said softly. "She still doesn't know anything. This is gonna be perfect." I stepped back before she could notice me. My throat felt tight. Perfect. That word kept echoing in my mind, warping into something sinister. What could possibly be perfect about keeping secrets from me? The next morning, I watched her leave for school, her backpack heavy and her eyes tired, and I wondered when she'd stopped seeing me as her mother and started seeing me as the enemy. That's when I realized my daughter was building something meant to destroy me. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to find out what Lila was doing behind my back. I knew it was wrong to invade her privacy, but the fear of what she might be planning was eating me alive. For days, I had tried to ignore it to convince myself that maybe it really was a harmless school project. But the way she watched me lately, the way she smiled when I walked into the room. It didn't feel harmless. It felt deliberate, calculated. That morning, after she left for school, I sat in the quiet kitchen staring at her laptop on the counter. I told myself I would only look for a minute, just enough to ease my mind. My hands trembled as I opened it. The screen lit up and my breath caught in my throat. There were folders neatly arranged on the desktop, each one labeled with my name in some form. Mom interview. Mom truth. The real Evelyn. My pulse quickened. I clicked on one of them, and what I saw made my stomach twist. Dozens of video files, some of me cooking, cleaning, talking on the phone, some recorded without my knowledge. There were screenshots of my texts, pictures of my planner, even a recording of me crying in the living room a few weeks ago after losing a freelance client. I felt sick. I clicked on one of the videos, and there was my face filling the screen. I was sitting on the couch, talking to Carla over the phone, saying something about how tired I was of trying to hold everything together for Lila's sake. Hearing my own words used out of context made me feel exposed, violated. Then I opened a document titled The Truth About My Mom. It wasn't an essay, it was a video script. She had written it like a story, with scenes, transitions, and captions. I started reading, and my heart shattered with every line. My mother lies. It began. She wants everyone to think she's the perfect single mom, but behind closed doors, she's cold, manipulative, and fake. My hands trembled as I scrolled. She accused me of caring more about my online image than her happiness. She claimed I forced her to smile in family pictures and pretended to be loving in front of guests. Each paragraph was worse than the last, small truths twisted into cruel exaggerations. She had taken every mistake I'd ever made and painted it as proof that I was a monster. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I sat there reading for what felt like hours, my heart racing, my mind spinning. Then I noticed the date at the top of the script. Premiere, Thanksgiving Day. I froze. Premiere. That meant she was planning to post it online. I went back to the folders and found another one titled Final Cut. Plans. Inside were notes about lighting, audio, and editing dates. The last file was called Thanksgiving Reveal. When I opened it, my vision blurred with tears. It was a schedule. She planned to upload the video while we were hosting our family's Thanksgiving live stream. She had written, "Post goes live at 4 p.m. when everyone's watching." My stomach turned. I imagined my parents, my friends, my coworkers, all of them seeing that video pop up on her channel. Seeing my daughter tell the world I was a fraud. I couldn't even think straight. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence, my hands covering my face. How could she do this? Why? I thought about the last few months, how distant she'd been, how she'd started idolizing her father again. Peter had always been good at twisting things. He could take any situation and make me the villain. Had he been feeding her this? Had he encouraged it? I wanted to call him right then, to demand answers, but I stopped myself. This wasn't about him. This was about my daughter. My baby. The girl I'd raised, loved, sacrificed everything for. I got up and walked to her room, hoping to find some clue, something that would explain why she was doing this. Her walls were covered in sticky notes, quotes, reminders, outlines. One note read, "Tell your side before she does." Another said, "Truth is freedom." My chest ached. What truth? I wasn't perfect, but I'd never lied to her. I'd only ever tried to protect her from Peter, from the chaos of the divorce, from the world. And now, she was ready to destroy me in front of that same world. I sat on her bed, clutching one of her old teddy bears. It still smelled faintly of her childhood shampoo, the kind she'd begged me to buy every time we went shopping. For a moment, I saw her as she used to be. Giggling, curious, loving. I wanted to believe that little girl was still somewhere inside her. But then I remembered the cold, empty look in her eyes lately, and the thought nearly broke me. When I heard her come home later, I quickly put everything back the way I'd found it. I couldn't let her know I'd seen. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to stop this without losing her completely. That night, I lay awake again, the glow of her bedroom light seeping through the crack under her door. I could hear her typing furiously, editing her video, probably adding more of our life into it. I wanted to knock, to beg her to stop. But I couldn't move. I felt paralyzed by fear and heartbreak. I knew I had to stop her before Thanksgiving, but how could I confront my own child without losing her forever? Every instinct in me screamed to confront Lila, but fear held me back. I stood in the hallway that night, staring at her closed door, listening to the faint clicking of her keyboard. I could have walked in. I could have demanded answers, yelled, cried, begged her to explain what she was doing, but something stopped me. The truth was, I was terrified. Not just of what she was planning, but of how much damage had already been done. If I confronted her and she found out I'd gone through her laptop, it would only make things worse. She'd call me controlling, intrusive, she'd use that as proof for her video. So instead, I pretended nothing was wrong. I played the role of the calm, cheerful mother, smiling through the tension that sat heavy in every room of our house. At dinner, I asked about her day, though I already knew what she'd been doing. She answered politely, barely making eye contact, like we were two strangers sharing a meal out of obligation. I noticed how carefully she avoided her phone when I was around now. Always keeping it face down, always taking it with her when she left the room. I tried to stay patient. Maybe she'd come to her senses. Maybe she'd realize how much pain this would cause and delete the whole thing. But each night, the light under her door stayed on, longer. Each morning, she looked more determined. And I felt myself unraveling. I'd start crying in the shower just to make sure she wouldn't hear me. I'd stare at my reflection in the mirror, wondering if maybe I really was what she said I was: fake, cold, undeserving of love. There were moments when I almost believed it. When the guilt and exhaustion twisted so tightly inside me that I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Carla noticed something was wrong the next time she visited. "You look pale," she said. "Are you sleeping at all?" I shook my head and confessed everything about the video, the folders, the Thanksgiving plan. She gasped, hand over her mouth. "Evie, that's insane! You have to stop her!" "How?" I whispered. "If I go to her, she'll just think I'm trying to silence her. If I delete her work, she'll hate me forever." Carla leaned forward. "But she's planning to humiliate you in front of everyone. Don't you deserve to defend yourself?" I stared at my hands. "Maybe I do. But she's still my daughter. I don't want to fight her. I just want her to see that I'm not her enemy." Carla sighed and placed her hand over mine. "Then you need to talk to her before it's too late." But too late felt closer every second. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat on the couch, scrolling through old family videos on my phone, the ones from when she was little. There was one from Thanksgiving 5 years ago. She was 10, wearing a little apron, covered in flour, proudly showing off the pie she helped bake. "Say something for the camera," Peter's voice said behind the lens. Lila smiled wide. "Mom's the best cook ever," she chirped. I covered my mouth, tears stinging my eyes. How had we gone from that to this? When did I stop being her hero and start being her target? As the video played, I heard a soft creak from the stairs. Lila was standing there, watching me. For a moment, neither of us said a word. She looked almost guilty. "What are you watching?" she asked, her voice small. "Just an old video," I said softly. "You used to love helping me bake." Her expression flickered, nostalgia, then defensiveness. "Yeah. Well, people change." She turned to go back upstairs, but I stopped her. "Lila," I said gently, "if there's something you're upset about, you can tell me. You don't have to go through it alone." She hesitated. "It's not that simple, Mom." "Then make me understand," I pleaded. "Please, I just want to know what's going on." Her lips trembled for a moment, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she was about to open up. But instead, she just shook her head. "You'll find out soon enough." Then she disappeared upstairs, leaving me in silence again. My heart cracked a little more. The next day, I tried calling Peter. He didn't answer. I sent him a message. "We need to talk about Lila. It's urgent." He read it but didn't reply. That told me everything. He knew. Somehow. He was part of this. He'd always had a way of twisting Lila's emotions, using her as a weapon when things didn't go his way. After the divorce, he made sure to tell her that I'd taken her away from him, even though it was the court's decision. He loved playing the victim. I began to suspect that he'd been whispering in her ear for months, planting seeds of resentment. Maybe this whole thing wasn't just Lila's doing, maybe it was his. But how could I prove it without making her hate me even more? My therapist once told me that secrets rot families from the inside out. I finally understood what she meant. Our home, once full of warmth and laughter, now felt hollow. Every conversation was an act, every smile was a lie. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since before the divorce. Writing helped me think clearly. I filled pages with my fears, my regrets, my confusion. Somewhere in those words, I hoped I'd find an answer, a way to reach my daughter before she destroyed both of us. One morning, as I sat at the kitchen table, my eyes bleary from another sleepless night, I noticed something lying near the coffee pot. It was a stack of papers. I picked them up, and my heart stopped when I saw the title printed at the top in bold letters, Mom's Thanksgiving Confession. But when I found a printed script on the kitchen counter labeled Mom's Thanksgiving Confession, I realized the countdown had begun. The printed pages trembled in my hands as I read the title, How My Mom Lied to Everyone for Years. My breath caught in my throat, and for a long moment, I couldn't even move. I stood there in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room, while the words on the first page blurred in front of my eyes. I sank slowly into a chair, holding the stack of papers like they might explode if I gripped too tight. The first paragraph hit me like a punch to the chest. My mom has always been obsessed with looking perfect, it began. But what people don't know is that behind the photos, the smiles, and the carefully planned dinners, she's cruel, manipulative, and fake. My eyes darted to the next line. She made me hide my feelings, forced me to pretend we were happy, and blamed me for my dad leaving. I read it again and again, my pulse pounding in my ears. It felt like someone else's life, but it was mine, twisted into a story meant to destroy me. She wrote about nights when I cried after losing my job, but she called it emotional blackmail. She described how I'd post pictures of us online, something I did to celebrate our memories, and painted it as a performance. Every sentence was soaked in bitterness, shaped to make me look like a villain. I wanted to scream, to rip the pages apart, to shake sense into her, but instead, I just sat there, numb. Somewhere, deep down, a voice whispered that this wasn't just anger, this was revenge. I turned another page, hoping to find a hint of remorse, something that said she didn't mean it. Instead, I found dialogue, fake conversations she'd written to make me sound worse. She quoted me saying things I never said. "You'll never be enough," one line read, supposedly from me to her. I would never say that. Never. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I flipped to the next section, labeled Act 2, The Perfect Lie. A scene description. Mom sitting at the dinner table pretending to be kind, while I secretly record her lies. My heart stopped. She'd been recording me again, maybe every dinner, every talk. I tried to remember what I'd said recently, what moments she could use against me. Every small argument, every sigh, every raised voice, it all came flooding back. Each one could be twisted into proof. The pit in my stomach deepened as I realized she wasn't just planning to embarrass me. She wanted to destroy me completely. I flipped through more pages, desperate for answers, until I reached the last one. The final lines were highlighted in yellow. This Thanksgiving, the world will finally see who my mother really is. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from crying out loud. My daughter wasn't just angry at me, she wanted to expose me in front of everyone we knew. Family, friends, coworkers, even strangers online. The humiliation would be unbearable. I sat there for what felt like forever, reading and rereading her words, searching for some clue, some explanation that would make it make sense. But there was none. Just accusation after accusation, a mountain of resentment I hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. When had it started? Was it after the divorce? After Peter left? Or had it been building all along, hidden beneath those polite smiles and one-word answers? I tried to remember the last real conversation we'd had the last time she looked at me with love instead of disdain. I couldn't. My thoughts went back to Peter again. He used to say things like, "You're smothering her, Evelyn," or "You're making her choose between us." Maybe he'd been planting these ideas in her head for years. Maybe he'd been feeding her this twisted version of reality until she believed it completely. I felt my hands shake as I gathered the pages, pressing them into a neat pile. My heart ached in a way I didn't think was possible. I thought about confronting her right then, shoving the script in her face and demanding answers, but another part of me was too afraid. What if she didn't deny it? What if she looked me in the eye and told me she meant every word? I couldn't bear that. I folded the script and hid it in the bottom drawer of my desk, like burying something cursed. But the damage was already done. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her words, bold, venomous, final. I imagined her posting that video, watching the view count rise while the comments poured in. People calling me a monster, a liar, a bad mother. I imagined co-workers whispering about me, relatives taking sides, friends deleting me from their lives. The thought was suffocating. Around midnight, I walked into her room. She was asleep, her face peaceful, almost innocent. I stood there watching her, my chest tightening with heartbreak and anger. She looked like the same little girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, clutching her stuffed rabbit. How could that same child write something so cruel? I reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "What happened to us?" I whispered. She didn't stir. I wanted to wake her up and demand to know why, but instead, I quietly walked out and closed her door. Back in my room, I opened my laptop and searched her social media again. There, it was a scheduled event on her channel titled, "The Truth About My Mom." The premiere date was set for Thanksgiving Day at 4 p.m. I felt my blood run cold. She'd even added a caption, "The truth always comes out, even at the dinner table." My tears turned to ice. And then I saw the final line of her script. "This Thanksgiving, the world will finally see who my mother really is." I needed to understand what pushed my daughter this far. The anger had burned out of me, leaving only confusion and grief in its place. Sitting at my desk the next morning, I stared at the folded script I'd hidden in the drawer and wondered when my little girl had turned into someone capable of such cruelty. Children don't just wake up one day and decide to hate their parents, not without help. And when I thought about who might have helped her, only one name came to mind: Peter. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since our last bitter argument about child support. He'd always been charming on the outside, but behind closed doors, he could twist words like a knife. He was the kind of man who smiled while he tore you apart. I'd seen him do it to coworkers, friends, and finally to me. He had a way of rewriting history until you started to believe his version. Maybe he'd done the same to Lila. I went digging for answers. Old journals, photos, messages, anything that might help me trace when the distance between Lila and me started. I found one of my journals from the first year after the divorce. My handwriting was shaky, desperate. I wrote about how Lila would come home from weekends with Peter angry and withdrawn, refusing to talk to me. She said Peter told her I ruined his life, one entry read. Another one said, "Lila cried tonight. She said she wished she could live with her dad because he understood her." Reading those words again years later felt like reopening an old wound that never healed properly. I'd done everything I could to shield her from the ugliness between us, but Peter had made me the villain in his story, and she had believed him. Maybe she never stopped. I opened my laptop and searched Peter's social media. His profile picture was him and Lila at a diner, smiling like they were the happiest father-daughter duo on earth. The photo was posted 2 weeks ago. My heart clenched. I scrolled through the comments and saw one that made me freeze. "Can't wait to see your side of the story, Lila." He'd replied with a winking emoji. It was all there, the connection, the encouragement, the manipulation. Peter was feeding this. He was helping her plan my downfall. He always knew how to make someone else do his dirty work. I closed the laptop and grabbed my car keys. I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed to look him in the eyes and ask him what he'd done to our daughter. When I pulled up to his house, the driveway was empty except for his old gray SUV. I sat there for a few seconds, rehearsing what I'd say, then forced myself to knock on the door. He answered, looking surprised but not guilty. "Evelyn," he said with a smirk. "Didn't expect to see you here." "We need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady. "About Lila." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Ah, I figured this was coming." He stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. The house was spotless, sterile, almost. No sign of a teenager living there, not even a backpack or shoes by the door. That told me everything I needed to know. He didn't actually spend time with her. He performed fatherhood like everything else in his life, a show for an audience. "She's been distant lately." I started carefully. "And I found something that makes me think you've been encouraging her to hurt me." Peter laughed softly, crossing his arms. "Encouraging her?" "No. I've just been listening to her, Evelyn. Something you never did." "That's not true," I said quickly. "I've always been there for her." "Have you?" he asked, tilting his head. "Because, from what she's told me, all you care about is control. You wanted her to be perfect, to smile for your friends, to play the part of the good daughter in your little online fantasy." His words stung because they mirrored Lila's, almost word for word. "You put those ideas in her head," I whispered. "You're the one who's poisoning her." He shrugged. "She's old enough to see things for herself now. I don't have to say much, she sees who you are." "She's a child," I snapped, my voice breaking. "You're turning her against me for your own ego." "I don't need to turn her," he said calmly. "You did that all on your own." I wanted to scream, to throw something, but I forced myself to stay composed. "She's planning to post a video," I said. "A video that could destroy both of us. If you cared about her at all, you'd stop this." His smirk widened. "Why would I stop her? She wants to speak her truth. Maybe it's time people saw the real Evelyn, the one behind the perfect smile." I stared at him, realizing there was no reasoning with him. He'd never changed. He'd rather see Lila burn her relationship with me to the ground than admit his own failures. I turned to leave, shaking with anger. "If you let her do this," I said quietly, "you'll regret it. Not because of what it does to me, but because of what it'll do to her." He said nothing. Just watched me walk out with that same smug expression he'd worn the day I left him. Driving home, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded with rage, sorrow, and something else, resolve. He might have manipulated her, but I wasn't going to let him win. Not this time. As I pulled into the driveway, the sun was setting, and the house glowed with the soft light of the candles I'd set out for Thanksgiving. For a fleeting second, it looked peaceful again, almost normal. But I knew that peace was a lie. What Peter said, when I confronted him, made me question everything I thought I knew about my own daughter. Peter didn't deny it, he smirked when I brought up Lila's online plans. The arrogance in his eyes told me everything before he even opened his mouth. He was proud of it, proud of what she was doing, as if my daughter's betrayal was his masterpiece. I'd driven back to his house that evening, after hours of pacing my living room trying to convince myself I'd misread the situation. I couldn't. I needed to hear it from him directly to know if he was truly the one whispering poison into her ears. When he opened the door again, he didn't even look surprised. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" he said lightly. "Come to talk about our star in the making?" My blood ran cold. "Our star?" I repeated, stepping inside before he could stop me. "What do you mean by that?" He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes gleaming with amusement. "You've seen her videos, haven't you? Or at least the ones she's working on. The kid's got talent. Passion. She's got a story to tell, and people love a good story." "A story?" My voice cracked. "You're letting her tell lies about her own mother. You're encouraging her to ruin her life and mine for what? Attention?" He shrugged casually. "Truth sells, Evelyn. Even your version of it." I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You're sick," I whispered. "You've always been sick. You say that every time you lose control, he replied, smirking. I'm not the one who's lost control of his kid. That hit me harder than it should have. I tried to steady my breathing. What exactly did you tell her? I asked, keeping my tone as calm as possible. What lies did you feed her? He stepped closer, his voice lowering to that cold, manipulative whisper I'd learned to dread years ago. I didn't have to feed her anything, Evelyn. She came to me crying, saying you'd been pretending all her life, that you forced her to keep quiet, that you care more about your image than her happiness. I just listened. I gave her a space, to be honest. You twisted her pain, I snapped. You're using her to get revenge on me. Revenge? He laughed. No. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice. I felt dizzy. You're destroying her, I said. You think this will make her feel better? You think turning her against me will fix your ego? He tilted his head. She doesn't need fixing. She needs freedom from you. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists to keep steady. Freedom? I repeated bitterly. You mean from the woman who fed her? Raised her? Protected her while you disappeared for months? You're a coward, Peter. You always have been. His smile faltered for just a moment before returning stronger. Funny, he said. That's not how she sees it. She told me how you always staged everything for social media. The photos, the dinners, the fake laughter. You turned her childhood into a performance, and now she's finally rewriting the script. His words sank deep, poisoning every vein. Somewhere in my heart, I knew there were fragments of truth in what he said, yes. I'd tried to make things look perfect, but only because I was desperate to hold something together. I wanted to protect her from the chaos. I wanted her to have a childhood that didn't feel broken. But now, that very effort had become the reason she hated me. I could feel tears building in my eyes, but I refused to let him see me cry. You're a cruel man, I said quietly. And you're going to regret this. He smiled coldly. No, Evelyn. You'll regret it. When that video goes live and everyone sees you for what you really are, maybe then you'll finally understand what it feels like to lose control. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, he called after me. Oh, and Evelyn? I froze. She's not just doing this for herself, he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. She's doing it for me, because she finally knows who the real victim is. The words hit like a physical blow. I stormed out, slamming the door behind me, and drove off with tears streaming down my face. The road blurred before me, headlights streaking like ghosts. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. I stumbled into the kitchen, gripping the counter for balance. My reflection in the dark window looked hollow, almost unrecognizable. I could still hear his voice in my head, smug, cruel, triumphant. He'd done it. He'd turned my daughter into his weapon. I pulled out my phone and opened Lila's social media again. There it was, a new post. A teaser image for her upcoming video, a blurry photo of me sitting at the dinner table, my face half lit by candlelight. The caption read, "Sometimes, the truth starts with silence." I felt my knees go weak. She'd already begun the countdown. I couldn't sit and wait for the world to see me through Peter's twisted lens. I had to do something, anything, to protect her from him, and from herself. That night, I made a decision that would change everything I was going to fight back. I couldn't let my daughter ruin both our lives over a man's manipulation. For the first time in weeks, anger started to replace the fear that had been paralyzing me. I'd spent too long feeling helpless watching Peter pull strings while Lila drifted further away. But not anymore. I might not have control over how they saw me, but I could still protect my family from falling apart completely. The first step was to gather proof. I needed to show Lila the truth, not just tell her. Peter had always thrived on twisting words. If I confronted him again, he'd only make me look crazier. So I started collecting everything I could. Screenshots of their messages, copies of her posts, timestamps from her recordings, and even some of the photos Peter had commented on. It felt invasive and wrong, But I kept reminding myself this was for her own good. If I didn't act, she would destroy herself right alongside me. The next morning, I made an appointment with a family lawyer someone Carla recommended. His name was Stephen Hall, a calm, middle-aged man with kind eyes. When I told him the situation, he listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting down notes. "You have to tread carefully," he said finally. "If you go through her devices again, or delete anything, she could accuse you of violating her privacy. You don't want this to escalate into a legal mess." I nodded, my throat dry. "So what do I do? Just let her embarrass me in front of the world?" He leaned back in his chair. "You can't stop her from speaking her mind, but you can change what she believes is the truth. The key isn't confrontation, it's communication. She needs to hear your side in a way that doesn't sound like an attack." I wanted to laugh at that. Communication? My daughter barely looked at me these days. "She won't listen," I said quietly. "Not anymore." "Then make her listen," he said gently. "Not by arguing, by showing her that you still love her even if she's wrong." His words stayed with me long after I left his office. Love. It felt so small compared to the chaos Peter had created, but maybe it was the only weapon I had left. That night, I made Lila's favorite dinner lasagna with garlic bread, the one we used to make together when she was younger. When she came home from school, I greeted her with a smile, trying to hide my exhaustion. "Hey, sweetheart, I made dinner." She glanced at the table, then at me, suspicious. "What's this for?" "No reason," I said. "I just wanted us to eat together." She hesitated before sitting down, phone still, and in her hand. We ate mostly in silence, the sound of clinking silverware filling the space between us. I tried small talk. "How's school?" "Fine. Any projects?" "Yeah. Want to tell me about them?" She looked up, eyes sharp. "You'll find out soon enough." My heart sank, but I forced a smile. "Okay, I'll look forward to it." She went back to eating, and I realized how much effort it took just to keep the conversation civil. After dinner, she disappeared into her room again. I waited an hour, then quietly opened the door a crack. She was editing on her laptop, her face illuminated by the blue light. I wanted to go in, to beg her to stop, but I remembered Stephen's words, love, not confrontation. I closed the door softly and went back downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the flickering candles, wondering where I went wrong. Around midnight, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not in a formal, religious way, but just pleaded. For strength. For a miracle. For my daughter to remember who I was before Peter's poison got inside her head. The next day, I visited her school under the pretense of dropping off a form. While I was there, I asked to see her guidance counselor, a gentle woman named Miss Harding. When I explained a little just that Lila and I were struggling to connect, she sighed and said, "You're not the first mother to feel that way. Teenagers process pain differently. Lila's been under a lot of stress lately, trying to find her voice after the divorce." "Find her voice?" I repeated. "She feels silenced," Miss Harding said softly. "She told me she's been holding things in for years. Maybe she thinks telling her story will help her heal." Her words hit me like a weight. I'd been so focused on the humiliation, the betrayal, that I hadn't stopped to think about why Lila was doing this in the first place. Maybe, in her mind, this wasn't revenge. Maybe it was her way of taking back control after years of feeling powerless. But she didn't understand what her father was doing. She didn't realize she was being used. When I left the school, I sat in the car for nearly an hour, replaying every moment of our lives together. The birthday parties, the bedtime stories, the first day of kindergarten, all of it seemed so distant now. I'd thought I was protecting her, but maybe I'd only been building walls between us. For the first time, I started to see the cracks in my own reflection too. Still, no matter what she believed, I couldn't let her destroy herself online. The internet never forgets. Once that video went public, her pain would become entertainment for strangers. I had to stop it gently, but firmly. I made a plan. I'd wait until the day before Thanksgiving. I'd ask her to help me decorate, like we used to, and once we were alone, I'd talk to her not as a mother defending herself, but as a woman who loved her daughter more than her pride. Maybe if she saw my sincerity, she'd finally put the camera down. That night, as I packed away the fall decorations, I caught sight of the Thanksgiving centerpiece I'd made weeks earlier: candles, leaves, and a photo of the two of us from years ago. Lila had written something on the corner of the picture in faint black marker. "Nothing lasts forever." My throat tightened. I placed the photo face down on the table. I had 2 days left and one last chance to save my daughter from destroying us both. The night before Thanksgiving, I finally gathered the courage to confront Lila. My hands had been trembling all day, my stomach tied in knots. The house was spotless, the table set, the turkey marinating, the smell of cinnamon and nutmeg filling the air, but inside, I felt anything but calm. Every tick of the clock sounded louder, heavier, counting down to the moment I'd been dreading. I knew this couldn't wait until morning. If I didn't talk to her, tonight, that video would go live tomorrow, and there would be no turning back. Around 8 p.m., I stood outside her room, listening. I could hear the soft hum of her laptop, the faint click of her mouse, and her voice murmuring quietly. She was editing again. I knocked gently. "Lila?" She didn't answer at first. I heard a quick shuffle, a laptop lid closing. "Yeah?" she called out, sounding cautious. "Can I come in?" A pause. Then, "Sure." I opened the door slowly. Her room was dimly lit, strands of fairy lights casting a soft glow across the posters on her walls. She was sitting on her bed, cross-legged, phone in her hand, pretending to scroll. Her laptop was closed beside her. "What's up?" she asked flatly. I took a deep breath and sat down in the chair by her desk. "I think we need to talk," I said. She groaned. "If this is about Thanksgiving, I already told you I don't want to be in the stupid live stream." "It's not about that," I said quietly. "It's about what you're planning." Her eyes flicked up to mine, wary but defiant. "What are you talking about?" "The video. The one you're planning to post tomorrow." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she smirked faintly. "You went through my stuff, Lila. You went through my laptop." Her voice rose, sharp and shaking. "Wow, Mom. You really couldn't help yourself, could you?" "Please just listen," I said quickly. "I wasn't trying to invade your privacy. I needed to understand what's happening. You're saying things that aren't true, and you're going to hurt yourself more than anyone if you post that video." "Not true?" she snapped. "Everything in that video is the truth, Mom. You're just mad that I finally get to tell it." I stood, my heart pounding. "It's not the truth, Lila. It's Peter's version of the truth. Can't you see that he's using you?" Her expression hardened, instantly. "Don't talk about Dad like that. You don't know what he's capable of," I said, my voice trembling. "He's twisting things, like he always does. He wants you to hate me because he can't stand that I left him. He's always needed someone to blame." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You're the one who ruined everything. You turned me against him. You made me feel guilty for loving him." I stepped closer, tears filling my eyes. "I never wanted to turn you against him. I just wanted to protect you from how cruel he could be." "You call that protection?" she shot back. "You hid things. You lied. You acted like everything was fine while you cried behind closed doors. Do you know how confusing that was for me? You made me feel crazy for seeing the cracks in our perfect family." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the pain behind her anger. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You were a child, Lila. I didn't want you to see how broken things really were. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You weren't," she whispered. "You were pretending. You still are." I felt something inside me break. "Maybe I was," I said softly. "Maybe I did fake it sometimes, but I was trying to hold us together. I was trying to give you something that felt normal." "It wasn't normal," she said, her voice trembling now. "It was fake. Everything was fake. The photos, the dinners, the smiles. You cared more about what people thought than about me." Her words cut deep, sharper than any knife. I wanted to defend myself, to tell her she was wrong, but I couldn't. Because part of her was right. I had cared about appearances. I'd spent years building an image of stability because I was terrified of what would happen if people saw how broken we really were. I thought I was protecting her from shame, but all I'd done was teach her to bury her feelings. "You're right," I said finally. I did care about how things looked. Because I didn't want anyone to know how scared I was. I thought if I kept smiling, if I made everything look perfect, then maybe you wouldn't feel how messy things really were. She looked at me, her eyes glistening, but her jaw stayed tight. "It's too late for that," she said. "People need to know the truth." "And what truth is that?" I asked quietly. "That your mom isn't perfect? That she makes mistakes? That she tried too hard to make everything okay when it wasn't? If that's what you want to tell the world, then fine, Lila. But please, don't do it out of hate. Don't let your father turn your pain into his revenge." For a moment, she didn't respond. Her breathing was shaky, uneven. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "You care more about your image than you do about me." The words pierced through me like a blade. I felt the air leave my lungs. "That's not true," I said weakly, my voice breaking. "Everything I've ever done has been for you." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Then stop trying to control me. Just let me be honest." I took a step toward her, but she backed away. "Please, Lila," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't post that video. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Let's talk about this, just you and me. I'll listen, I promise." She wiped her face roughly, her expression hardening again. "It's already scheduled," she said quietly. "I'm not changing it." My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of her desk to stay upright. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I understand perfectly," she said coldly. "For once, I'm telling the truth." Then she said something that pierced deeper than anything else. "You care more about your image than you do about me." Thanksgiving morning arrived like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The sky was gray, the air thick with that quiet stillness before a storm. I'd barely slept, every hour had crawled by. My mind looping over our fight, her words echoing until they no longer sounded like hers, but mine, accusing me from somewhere deep inside. I got up before dawn and started cooking anyway, out of habit more than hope. The smell of roasting turkey filled the kitchen, but it felt wrong, hollow. Every motion, chopping, stirring, tasting, felt mechanical, like I was playing a part I no longer believed in. Lila came downstairs around 9, her hair in a messy bun, wearing her sweatshirt with the logo of her high school's media club. She didn't look at me when she grabbed a cup of coffee. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said quietly. "Yeah," she murmured, eyes glued to her phone. I wanted to ask if she'd reconsidered, if maybe she'd taken down the video during the night. But I was too afraid of the answer. Instead, I just watched her, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear the same way I used to when I was her age. Around noon, Carla arrived. She took one look at me and frowned. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't," I admitted. "It's today." 4 p.m., she placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "We'll get through this," she said softly. "Whatever happens, you're not alone." I wanted to believe her. But as the clock ticked closer to 4, the air inside the house grew unbearably heavy. Family members started arriving, my parents, my brother and his wife, my nieces and nephews. Everyone was cheerful, chatting, laughing, oblivious to the ticking bomb in the room. Lila was quiet but polite, helping serve drinks, smiling just enough to seem normal. Every time I caught her glancing at the clock, my chest tightened. By 3:30, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled Carla aside into the hallway. "I don't think I can do this," I whispered. "It's like waiting for my own execution." Carla squeezed my hand. "You can't stop it now. But you can control how you respond. Don't let her see you fall apart." I nodded, though my throat felt too tight to speak. The living room was decorated perfectly. Candles, flowers, the table set with our best china. It looked like a magazine spread. Fake perfection, just like she said. Everyone gathered around the table as I brought out the turkey. My hands were trembling as I set it down. Looks amazing, Evie, my brother said, grinning. You've outdone yourself again. I forced a smile, but my heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear his words. Lila sat at the far end of the table, her phone next to her plate, the screen facing down. I couldn't take my eyes off it. 3:55. 5 minutes. She was checking the time too. At exactly 4, I heard the faint buzz of a notification. Her phone lit up with a preview. Your video is now live. My body went cold. She didn't move at first. She just stared at it. Then, slowly, a small, almost imperceptible smile crossed her face. Lila? I whispered. She looked up at me, eyes steady. What? Please, I said, my voice cracking. Tell me you didn't. Dinner's getting cold, she interrupted, cutting into her turkey. Carla shot me a panicked glance, but the rest of the table continued eating, unaware of what had just happened. My phone buzzed next, and I didn't even have to look to know what it was. I felt the world beginning to tilt. Notifications started coming in one after another, little digital daggers piercing the fragile calm. New video from Lila James, the truth about my mom. My name, my full name. I excused myself from the table and hurried into the kitchen, gripping the counter for balance. Carla followed, phone in hand. Evie, it's already getting views. How many? Thousands, she whispered. It's spreading fast. My heart pounded as I leaned against the wall. I wanted to throw up. Every instinct told me to open the video to see what she'd said, but I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to hear my daughter's voice tearing me apart. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Lila. She stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. You did it, I said softly. She didn't answer. Do you feel better now? She hesitated, eyes flickering for just a second, but then she lifted her chin. It's the truth, she said. People deserve to know. No, I said, my voice trembling. People deserve compassion. And you, my daughter, deserve protection. You don't know what you've just done. You're just mad you can't control the narrative anymore, she said coldly. You've been writing our story for years, and now it's my turn. Her words sliced through me. I tried to steady my breathing, but the tears came anyway. I never wanted to control you, Lila. I wanted to protect you. From him. From this world. From things that would break you. She took a step closer, her voice trembling now too. You can't protect me from the truth. Then at least let me stand beside you when it comes out, I said, my tone desperate. Don't turn me into your enemy. For a long moment we just stared at each other. I saw something flicker in her eyes, pain, guilt, doubt, but it vanished almost as quickly as it came. It's already done, she whispered, and walked away. I sank to the floor, my body shaking. Carla knelt beside me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders as I sobbed into her chest. It's not over, she said firmly. You'll find a way to fix this. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. In the other room, laughter and chatter continued, blissfully unaware that my life was unraveling in real time. I could hear Lila's phone buzzing over and over again, notifications, likes, comments, her version of the truth spreading faster than wildfire. And, in that moment, as the world began to see me through my daughter's eyes, I realized I wasn't just losing my reputation, I was losing her completely. By the next morning, everything had changed. I woke up to a flood of notifications, texts, and missed calls lighting up my phone like a storm. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages, some from friends, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Is everything okay? I saw Lila's video. I can't believe she'd say that. You should respond before this gets worse. My name was trending locally. People were sharing the video, commenting, dissecting it like it was a public spectacle. I hadn't even watched it yet. I couldn't bring myself to hear her voice saying those words. But part of me needed to know how bad it was. So I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and clicked play. The video began with soft piano music and old family photos, me holding her as a baby, her first birthday, our vacations. My throat tightened. Then her voice came on, calm but cold. "This is my story," she said. "And it's time people see what really happens behind the smiles." She spoke for 15 minutes, her tone measured, deliberate. She told stories from her childhood stories I recognized but twisted into something cruel. Moments when I'd cried from exhaustion became emotional manipulation. Rules I set to protect her became control. Her voice didn't tremble once. She ended the video staring straight into the camera, saying, "The truth always comes out, even on Thanksgiving." My vision blurred with tears. She'd edited it beautifully, clean cuts, emotional music, powerful phrasing. It was persuasive, convincing, and devastating. I sat there frozen for several minutes after it ended, the silence deafening. Carla came over soon after, her face pale. "Evie," she said softly, "it's everywhere. The comments are brutal." "What are they saying?" I asked, barely able to speak. She hesitated, then handed me her phone. I scrolled through a few comments. "This poor girl, her mom sounds toxic. Classic narcissistic parent behavior. She's so brave for speaking out." My stomach turned. Strangers, people who didn't know us, were tearing me apart, forming opinions based on a story that wasn't true. "You need to post something," Carla said gently. "Your side. A statement, maybe?" I shook my head. "If I respond, I'll just prove her right. She'll say I'm trying to control the narrative again." Carla looked at me helplessly. "Then what will you do?" I didn't have an answer. I felt like I was drowning. Every corner of my life was being rewritten by people who'd never met me. My coworkers had seen it too. My boss texted asking if I needed time off. Time off? From what, my life? I couldn't even leave the house. The shame was suffocating. Around noon, I finally gathered the courage to knock on Lila's door. "Lila," I called softly. No answer. "Please, honey, can we talk?" The door opened a crack. She looked exhausted, eyes puffy, hair messy. "What?" she muttered. "I watched the video," I said. Her jaw tightened. "Good." It broke my heart. "It was the truth," she said coldly. "No. It was your pain," I corrected gently. "And you turned it into punishment." She rolled her eyes. "You just don't get it." "Then help me," I pleaded. "Help me understand." For a second, I thought she might actually open up. But instead, she said, "You had your chance for years, Mom. You didn't listen then. It's too late now." The door slammed in my face. I stood there, tears streaming down, too tired even to knock again. That evening, my mother called. I hesitated before answering. "Evelyn," she said, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" "I just saw that video." "Lila." She sounds so angry. "I know," I whispered. "She doesn't understand. She's still your daughter," Mom said softly. "Don't give up on her." "I won't," I said, though my voice wavered. "But right now, she hates me." After hanging up, I sat in the living room, staring at the flickering candles on the table. Thanksgiving decorations still filled the house, mocking me. What was supposed to be a day of gratitude had turned into the day my world fell apart. Late that night, Carla sent me a message. "You should see this." It was a link to another post. Lila had gone live on her channel again. This time, she was answering questions from viewers. Her face filled the screen. Eyes tired but determined. "I didn't expect so many people to relate," she said softly. "So many kids have parents who pretend everything's fine when it's not." The comments scrolled fast. "You're so brave. We're with you. You're helping so many people." I felt a strange mix of pride and heartbreak. My daughter was articulate, confident, everything I wanted her to be. But she was using her voice to destroy me. When the live ended, I sat staring at the dark screen for a long time. Then, something unexpected happened. A notification popped up in email. It was from Peter. The subject line read, "You should be thanking me." My stomach twisted as I opened it. She's getting exactly what she deserves. Attention, validation, power. Something you never gave her. My hands shook as I read. Don't even think about trying to stop her now. It's too late. The world's on her side. I stared at the message until the words blurred. He wanted this. He wanted the chaos, the destruction. I realized then that this wasn't just about the video, it was about control. Peter had found a new way to control me, through Lila. I took a deep breath and wiped my tears. I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him keep her. Maybe I couldn't erase the damage, but I could still try to save her from him, from the internet, from herself. I opened a new document on my laptop and started to write. Not a statement, not a defense, just my story. The real one. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it, but it felt like the only thing left I could do. Because if I couldn't change the world's version of me, maybe I could still reach the one person whose opinion mattered most, my daughter. I didn't write my story to defend myself, I wrote it to finally be honest. For the first time in years, I didn't worry about how my words would sound or how people might judge me. I didn't try to sound perfect. I didn't filter the pain. I just told the truth. The real truth. I wrote about the years I spent pretending to be strong while I was falling apart inside. I wrote about Peter, the manipulation, the fear, the loneliness of trying to keep a family together with someone who only wanted to control it. I wrote about Lila, how much I loved her, how I tried to shield her from the chaos, and how that protection turned into distance. I didn't blame her. I blamed myself for thinking that silence could be love. I spent hours typing, crying between sentences. The words poured out of me like they'd been waiting years to be released. By dawn, I had 15 pages, raw, unedited, painful, but real. I called it A Mother's Truth. I printed a copy for myself and one for Lila. I didn't post it online. This wasn't for the world, it was for her. When she woke up that morning, she barely looked at me as she walked past the kitchen. Her phone was buzzing non-stop, notifications still rolling in. Lila, I said softly, holding the stack of papers. Can we talk? Not now, she muttered. Please, I said. Just 5 minutes. She sighed, exasperated, and turned toward me. What? I wrote something, I said. It's not a defense, it's just what you never got to hear from me. She frowned. What is it? My truth, I said simply. You don't have to read it. But it's yours if you want it. I set the pages on the counter and walked away before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I didn't look back. For hours, I kept myself busy: laundry, dishes, anything to keep from staring at the kitchen. Around noon, I heard her voice behind me. You really wrote all this? I turned. She was holding the papers, her eyes red-rimmed. I did, I said quietly. Why? Because I needed you to know what really happened. Not the filtered version, not the story your father told you. The truth from me to you. She looked down at the pages again, flipping through them. You said here that you stayed with him because you were afraid of what he'd do if you left. That's true, I said. He used to say if I ever walked away, he'd make sure I lost everything. And when I finally did leave, he made good on that promise. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice breaking. Because you were a child, you loved him. I didn't want to make you feel like you had to choose. But I did choose, she whispered. And I chose wrong. The words hung between us, heavy and fragile. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. Lila, I'm not asking you to choose now. I just want you to see that everything I did, the smiles, the pretending, it wasn't because I didn't care, it was because I was terrified. I thought if I kept things looking okay, maybe we'd both survive. She stared at me for a long time, her hands trembling around the pages. In the video, I said you only cared about your image, she said quietly. But now, I don't know. Maybe I was just angry you didn't show me how scared you were. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks. You had every right to be angry. I should have been honest with you. I should have told you the truth sooner. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, looking lost. What about Dad? He said you made him miserable. I did, I said softly. Because I wouldn't let him control me anymore. She blinked, taken aback by the honesty. I don't want you to hate him, I continued. I just want you to see both sides before deciding who's right. She sank onto a stool, clutching the papers to her chest. I thought posting that video would make me feel powerful, she whispered. But now I just feel empty. My heart broke hearing those words. We all do sometimes. She looked up at me, her voice trembling. People already saw it, Mom. It's everywhere. I can't take it back. I walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. Maybe not. But you can tell them the rest of the story. She frowned. What do you mean? Tell them the truth, I said. The whole truth. Tell them you were angry, confused, hurt, and that you learned something too. You don't have to protect me. Just be honest. She hesitated. They'll hate me for lying. No, I said. They'll see that you're human. She looked down again, her lips trembling. I don't deserve forgiveness. Then let me start by giving it to you, I whispered. Her eyes filled with tears, and she finally broke down, sobbing into her hands. I pulled her into my arms, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she didn't pull away. I held her as she cried, whispering that I loved her, that no video could ever change that. When she finally looked up, her face streaked with tears, she said, I'll take it down. I shook my head gently. Don't delete it, I said. Add to it. Make another video. Tell the truth this time, not just about me, but about you. I don't know if I can, she said. You can, I told her. And I'll help you if you want me to. She nodded slowly, the first hint of hope flickering in her eyes. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe we weren't completely broken after all. 2 days after our reconciliation, Lila asked if I would sit with her while she filmed a new video. Her voice was small when she asked, but it was the most sincere I'd heard it in months. We set up her camera together in the living room, the same space where she had secretly recorded me so many times before. Only now, there were no hidden angles, no deceit. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She sat on the couch, hands folded, eyes red but clear. I sat beside her, heart pounding. The camera light blinked on. Hey everyone, she began softly. This video is different from my last one. She paused, glancing at me, and I gave her a small nod. A few days ago, I posted a video about my mom. I said things that hurt her deeply. I thought I was telling the truth, but I didn't realize I was only telling part of it. Her voice wavered, and I wanted to reach out and hold her hand, but I let her continue. I was angry. I felt like I'd spent my whole life pretending to be happy because that's what I saw her do. I thought she cared more about how people saw us than about how I felt. And maybe, in some ways, I wasn't wrong. But I didn't understand why she did it. I didn't know the full story. She turned to me, eyes glistening. Do you want to say something? I spent years trying to keep our family from falling apart, I said softly, staring into the camera. And in the process, I ended up building walls between us. I thought that by keeping things together on the outside, I could protect her from the pain on the inside. But I see now that my silence hurt her just as much as the truth would have. Lila looked down, tears streaming freely. I made that first video because I wanted control, she said. I wanted people to hear me, to finally feel seen. But all I did was spread my pain. I put my hand gently over hers. You're not alone in that, Lila. We all make mistakes when we're hurting. She nodded, taking a shaky breath. I'm not deleting the old video, she said firmly. Because that version of me existed. That anger was real. But this version of me, the one who understands what my mom went through, deserves to be seen too. When she finished, she reached over and turned off the camera. Silence filled the room for a long moment before she finally whispered, Was that okay? I smiled, tears blurring my vision. It was perfect. She leaned against me, and for the first time in so long, it felt natural. No tension, no masks, just us. That night, she uploaded the new video. The title read, "The Whole Truth, A Conversation with My Mom." I didn't expect much. I didn't think people would forgive so easily. But within hours, the tone online started to shift. Comments poured in, this time softer, kinder. "This is what healing looks like. Thank you for showing both sides. You're both so brave for being honest." I stayed up late reading them, each one feeling like a small stitch mending something inside me. The next morning, news outlets started picking up the story. Teen reconnects with mother after viral feud. One headline read. Another said, "From revenge to redemption. A Thanksgiving story. That's restoring faith in family." I couldn't believe it. The same world that had once condemned me was now praising us for our vulnerability. Carla called, crying over the phone. "Evie? It's beautiful. You two, oh my God. You two really did it." My mother called too, her voice full of relief. "I knew she'd come back to you," she said. "I knew she would." Lila spent most of the day glued to her screen, responding to comments, not the hateful ones this time, but messages from people saying our story had helped them reach out to their own families. Every few minutes, she'd read one out loud to me, her face glowing. "Mom, this girl says she hasn't talked to her mother in 3 years, and now she wants to call her. Isn't that amazing?" It was. Beyond amazing. It was surreal. That evening, she came to my room, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, something she hadn't done since she was little. "Can we watch something?" she asked. I smiled. Of course. We curled up on the couch and put on an old holiday movie we used to love. Halfway through, she looked at me and said quietly, "I'm sorry for what I said. For what I did." I turned to her. "I forgive you," I said. "But promise me something, Lila. Next time you're in pain, talk to me before you talk to the world." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I will. I promise." The rest of the night was peaceful, almost ordinary. We laughed. We cried. We remembered who we were before everything went wrong. The weight that had crushed me for weeks began to lift. For the first time since all this began, I felt like we had a future again. I didn't know what the world would think tomorrow, but sitting there beside my daughter, I realized I didn't care. I had her back, and that was all that mattered. 10 days after Thanksgiving, the world had finally quieted down, but inside me, everything felt different. The house no longer carried that heavy silence that used to hang in the air like a fog. There was warmth again, laughter in small doses, and a new kind of honesty that I'd once been too afraid to welcome. The storm had passed, but its memory lingered in every corner of our home. The video Lila posted, the second one, had reached over 1 million views in just a few days. People called it raw, real, healing. And while I didn't care much for online validation anymore, I was grateful for what it did for her. The cruel comments had faded, replaced with messages of support and empathy. For the first time in months, Lila wasn't hiding behind her phone, she was using it to connect, not destroy. I watched her one morning at the kitchen table, reading messages from people her age. She looked different, lighter, freer. "Mom," she said suddenly, glancing up. "Did you see this one? This girl said she told her mom she loved her for the first time in 5 years, after watching our video." I smiled. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. I didn't think anything good could come out of all this," she admitted, stirring her coffee. "But maybe it did." "It did," I said softly. "It brought us back." She looked down, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wish we could just erase everything that happened?" I shook my head. "No, because then we wouldn't be here talking like this. You can't heal what you pretend never broke." She smiled faintly. "You sound like a therapist." "Maybe I've learned a thing or two," I said, laughing lightly. It felt good to laugh again. That weekend, Carla came by with a pumpkin pie and her usual blunt cheer. "Well, if this isn't the redemption arc of the century," she joked as she hugged me. "You've gone from public enemy #1 to inspirational mom of the year." I rolled my eyes. "Please don't start. I'm serious," she said, her tone softening. "You handled this with grace, Evie. Most people would have gone online swinging. But you showed love instead. And look what it did. I looked over at Lila, who was in the living room editing another video this time, for her school project about storytelling and perspective. She caught my eye and smiled. Love did more than fix us, I said quietly. It reminded me who I am. Carla grinned. You're stronger than you think. Later that night, after Carla left and the house settled into silence, I sat by the window watching the soft snow begin to fall. The twinkle lights from the porch cast a warm glow against the dark. I thought about everything that had happened in those 10 days, how something meant to destroy me had instead rebuilt me. Lila joined me a few minutes later, wrapped in a blanket. She sat beside me and leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. I've been thinking, she said quietly. About Dad. My heart clenched. What about him? I talked to him yesterday. I turned to her. You did? Yeah, she said softly. He called. He said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. I frowned. And what did you say? She looked down, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. I told him that standing up for myself didn't mean tearing someone else down. That I finally understand that now. I felt tears sting my eyes. I'm proud of you, I whispered. That took courage. She nodded slowly. He didn't like it. He hung up after a minute. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be, she replied. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I just felt free. We sat there in silence, watching the snow fall, the quiet between us peaceful instead of painful. It struck me then how much both of us had grown in such a short time. I'd learned to let go of control. She'd learned to see past anger. We weren't perfect, but we were honest, and that was enough. Over the next few days, things started to feel normal again, though normal had a new meaning now. We cooked dinner together, laughed over silly shows, and talked for the first time in years. She told me about her dreams, her fears, her regrets. I told her about mine too. One night, while washing dishes, she said quietly, I don't think I ever realized how lonely you must have felt. I set down the dish towel and looked at her. I was lonely, I admitted. But I never stopped loving you, even when you hated me. I never hated you, she said quickly. I was just hurt. And I didn't know how to handle it. I know, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Neither did I. She reached over and squeezed my hand. We're both still learning. Always will be, I said with a smile. The following Sunday, she posted one last video, a simple update titled, Moving Forward. In it, she thanked her viewers for their support but explained that she and I were taking time away from social media to focus on rebuilding our relationship. She ended it by saying, sometimes, the most powerful truth isn't about calling someone out, it's about letting them back in. When the video ended, she turned to me and asked, do you think people will understand? I smiled. They will. Because you finally do. She smiled back, and in that moment, I saw it the girl I'd raised, the one I thought I'd lost, sitting right in front of me. As the snow continued to fall outside, I realized that Thanksgiving hadn't been the end of something, it had been the beginning. 10 days after Thanksgiving, I finally understood that sometimes the truth doesn't tear families apart, it rebuilds them, piece by piece. Until love is all that's left.